Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, are you having a key problem? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, we're not taking questions today, and if you got a question for Tony Joe, you can always go to prudentmoney.com, send it into the Ask Bob section. Maybe we should get you an Ask Tony Joe question section. We'll think about that. Well, maybe I'll turn your mic on first. There we go.
Perhaps we could think about that, yeah.
And
how are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing really good. It's always love Fridays.
Fridays are the best.
Yes, they are. So if you have a question, since we don't have a Ask Tony Joe, just send it to me, and don't worry, I won't attempt to answer the question for you. I'll leave the car matters to Tony Joe, and we'll get back to you. Just make sure that you leave as much detail as possible. You know what's interesting, Tony Joe, is that a random thing such as a key fob, which we've talked about the last couple of programs, has drawn more questions than I think anything we've ever talked about off the air.
Well, that's, it's a unique problem to have, and it's not widely known that, there's not a lot of information about it. All you know is it works right up until the minute it doesn't, and then you're lost. You don't know what to do.
I guess the very first question that comes to mind is that you realize that it could be a key issue with your car not starting. So if you get into your car, you go to put the key in the ignition and nothing happens. There's a number of things it could be. Where do you even start to, as a driver, not a mechanic, but as a driver, where do you even start to maybe try to assess what the problem is, or do you just call the tow truck and go from there?
Well, as a consumer, when you get into the car, let's set up a scenario. It was fine last night. There was no problem at all. I got up this morning, my car won't start. It won't even make a noise. It doesn't even try to start. Well, the first thing that you want to do is look at the dash and see if you have a security system light of any kind blinking, flashing, or even on. That's the first sign that there's something wrong with the security system preventing the car from starting. The anti-theft portion is active. How come? Why? Well, there's many reasons why. One of the main reasons is the key fob. Doesn't identify with the computer. It doesn't see the right program, so it flashes the security, anti-theft. There's a number of versions on different makes and models. And that should tell you something right there. My key is the problem, or at least my security system is the problem. Unlikely there's anything wrong with the car. The most common thing would be the key fob. If the battery's dead, or if the programming has gone away for some reason, then it's not going to allow you to start the car, which is what you want it to do. I know it's inconvenient, but that is the whole idea behind having anti-theft on a vehicle, is to not let somebody just be able to start the car. It wants to identify that the key that's being used is the right person that's assigned to that automobile, or at least the key is.
So what? But if that key is if the battery in that key is dead, then you could be in a situation where the car won't start.
Yeah, if it's sending no signal because the battery's dead, then obviously the computer's seeing something wrong, and it's going, we're not sure who this is. We're not sure what's wrong. We just know we're not identifying the key.
So tell me this, as a mechanic, where do you start from the standpoint of the battery or the alternator? Because you said you've said in the past, we've got to get that right to make sure that you're treating the right problem, because you don't want to put replace a perfectly fine battery with a bad alternator.
Right. Well, see, now, here is, generally speaking, for the most part, I'm going to make this statement. The key fob being an issue with the security system on the car usually will not allow the car to even try to start. It won't even make a noise. It won't crank over and not start. It won't click, tick, or make any kind of a noise at all. It's an open circuit, so you push the button or turn the key, whichever ignition type system you have, and it just doesn't make a noise. So now you got to go back and think, well, let's see, could it be the battery or alternator? Well, it could be. Turn the headlights on, see if you've got any lights. If you have headlights and you have all the lights on the dash lighting up and you have pretty much power everywhere, you can then kind of think, well, maybe it's not the battery, and that would encourage me to automatically look at the dash. If you're not familiar with where your security system light is or your anti-theft or your warning sign or warning light for that system is, you can always look in the glove compartment, or you can look it online and see it's going to be a telltale signal that there's something wrong with the security system, because the light should be on, the light should be flashing, and that would be not true if it was a dead battery or an alternator, something like that.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to this special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. If you got a question for me, go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Send it into the Ask Bob section, and we'll get you taken care of. You can also send a question in for Tony Joe as well. Let's talk about a couple of questions that have come in. The first one starts off, first of all, thank you for Car Fridays. I have an issue with my 2011 VW. Has 110,000 miles and has been a good car, but it has a very odd issue with the keys. The key is the kind that is square with 3 buttons. When the weather is really hot, like it always is here in Texas, and the inside of the car gets heated up, then when I insert the key into the ignition, it goes into immobilizer mode and completely locks down. This only happens during hot months. Right now, during our cooler months, this does not happen when I start the car and the inside is not blazing hot. The VW dealer says it is the key and I need a new one. If that is the case, why does this only happen during the summer? When this does happen, I disconnect the battery cable and reconnect them and problem solved. During the summer, if I put a wet towel on the dash, it would go into immobilizer mode. Nobody has been able to give us the answer to this, and I'm not a mechanic, but it is possible that heat can cause a component inside the ignition opening to expand or malfunction.
That's exactly true. This is, give me that year again. Does it say?
Oh, yeah, it's a 2011 VW.
Okay, because the person isn't here for me to ask any questions to try to eliminate some issues, I would suggest, because of what he's doing, or he or she, sounds like they're had this problem for a while and they're trying to resolve it, but nobody seems to have an answer. Okay, a 2011. There's no way for us to know, Bob, how old or new the battery is in the vehicle. So we could have him or her call in, and I'd be glad to talk to them about it. But one of the first things that you want to suspect when it comes to weather, whether it's cold in the winter and it does it, or whether it's hot in the summer and it does it, I believe they're onto something with expansion due to heat. Probably, more than likely, it's going to be in the dashboard region or the steering column region where the ignition is. But one of the things you want to not overlook is how old is the battery in the vehicle. Is it, 3 years or more old, 3 or more years old? If it is, it would be worth trying something that would be a starter box, which you could hook up just to experiment. I don't want them to buy a battery until we check some things first. But one of the things you want to suspect in a case like that would be the battery in the vehicle itself. How old is it? Is it anywhere near 3 years old. If it is, then I would suspect, even though it seems odd that it would do it only in hot weather, you would be surprised what happens under the hood, especially if it's sitting out in a parking lot, especially if the vehicle is black in color. I don't know any of these things, but I'd be willing to help the person try to figure it out if they want to give me a little more information. But the point of this whole thing is generally you want to be careful, because odd things can happen if the battery in the vehicle is getting old. Low voltage will cause a lot of different problems with immobilizer systems or anti-theft or security, either one.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Had another question come in. It says, I have a 2014 Toyota Camry. Anytime I put a new battery in my key, it goes out very quick. Even with my spare key, would this be a connection issue? Should Toyota issue new keys? What do you think's going on there? We've got about a minute before we go to break.
Okay. I've seen this before where the battery goes dead within a week or so, or a few days. That usually is going to be a remote problem. That is going to be in the remote itself, which means you probably are going to end up buying a new one, which unfortunately is expensive. But you always want to check with the dealer on something like that to see if there's an ongoing issue where it's under warranty.
Where it's under warranty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's probably not only under warranty when the car's under warranty, and when that goes away, you're pretty much out of luck.
Right.
They're expensive.
Yes, they are. They can be.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Actually, the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. We are up against a break. Stick around, and we'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and Kay Smith, PastorChuck.org. At PastorChuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at PastorChuck.org, a full library of great teachings by Kay Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and Kay Smith, PastorChuck.org.
Hi, I'm Jan Markell, host of Understanding the Times. We're very excited to be a part of Bible School Radio. I hope you will join me Saturday, 10 a.m., for cutting-edge guests and the latest information to help you discern the truth, even the inconvenient truth. We'll help you understand our times and contend for the faith. That's Understanding the Times, Saturday at 10 a.m., right here on Bible School Radio, or anytime at olivetreeviews.org.
It can seem impossible to forgive, especially when you've been hurt deeply, until you remember that you've been forgiven by God. This awesome truth should motivate us to extend forgiveness to others. Monday on Focal Point, Pastor Mike Fabarez shares a practical lesson on how to forgive, even when you don't feel like it. That's Monday on Focal Point.
Focal Point, weekday mornings at 8:30, here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to this special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. We're not taking questions today, and if you do have a question, you can always go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send the question in, and I will get that answered for you. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. You know, talking about the cost of those keys, I think if people really realize that you're probably going to drop $400 or $500, and that's probably pretty accurate. I heard that at one time. I think it was for an Audi.
Yeah, it can be expensive on the higher end cars, but there's also options. There are aftermarket options that you might look into. Yeah, they're not cheap either. Don't get the $25 deal. Don't get the one that costs. The dealer is going to charge you $240, but you can get one online for $25. That is not going to work. I guarantee you that's not. When it's too good to be true, it usually is. So watch out for the really, really cheap stuff. But there are options. You don't have to get it from the dealer. But you should go to at least a good locksmith who knows what he's doing and can sell you the right thing and
You would go to a locksmith.
You could, yeah. Locksmiths will, the kind. I don't mean call a locksmith to come to your house.
Right, sure.
Go to a qualified locksmith brick and mortar building where you walk in and tell them what's going on and let them check it and let them do, sell you the right product for what you need.
I just don't think that you think about having problems with your key fob. And the funny thing, I just think about all the times people walk into their house and they'll just throw their keys over onto a bowl or whatever they do. And if they really knew that would be a $300 or $400 mistake, that they could break something. I mean, probably not going to break something, just toss them over there. But, you get mad, you throw your keys or something, I guess.
Well, that
Think twice about doing it.
Sure. You got to realize that fob is a sensitive electrical device now with chips in it, and it's very sensitive to, vibrations and drops and things like that. So, yeah, you can drop your keys accidentally and end up with trouble with your fob from then on. I mean, it's just that simple. So try to be a little careful because it's that important. It's, you wouldn't throw a small watch or anything like that. It's got a battery in it. It's got a lot of little things. You wouldn't throw your watch on the counter. I've seen you do it, but most people wouldn't.
Yeah, right. And also one other thing,
I've seen you throw your Rolex on the counter.
Yeah, right. Well, I threw it in your Ferrari one time. You remember that?
Oh, that was the Lamborghini. That wasn't a Ferrari.
So one other thing, too, that if you've never changed out a battery in a key fob, it's literally getting a watch battery. Isn't that right?
It is yes.
Or a calculator, what you would get for a calculator.
Right. It's a small, it's a small round watch battery, basically. That's what I call it. But, the thing is, you want to be careful. Like, for instance, you can usually tell in little subtle things that you might notice. Like, if the battery's starting to go dead in your remote, it won't work from as far away as normal. You're walking up to the car and you got to get closer and closer before it'll lock or unlock the doors. Or in some cases, the car won't start and it says key fob not ID'd or battery low in key fob or whatever the make and model is, it'll say different things. But the one thing you might want to do is like on the push button type ignition systems where you push the button with your foot on the brake and it starts the car. Try this. If it doesn't work and it's an indication that there's something wrong with the fob, push the button with the fob. Get it right up there as close as possible and push the start button with the fob unit. And a lot of times if the battery is really weak or even dead, that will work to get you started. But as far as changing the battery, it's easy to do in most cases. You can look it up online and see how to do it. Or in many cases, you go to the grocery store and someone there will do it for you. I've had people tell me that they went up to the local grocery, one of the big supermarkets, and they'll put it in for you. It's a simple thing if you know how to do it.
Yeah, one other thing, too, that you don't really think of is the dealership. If you take it up to the dealership, they may actually do that. I've had them do that for free before.
And replace the battery?
Yeah, replace the battery, which is a nice service. You don't have to worry, you have to mess with it. And
somebody that knows what they're doing, it takes them,
2 seconds.
Yeah, it's simple. But if you don't know what you're doing, don't try it. Look it up first. And if you don't feel comfortable, because you don't want to break the plastic on that fob trying to pry it open when there's, in fact, a screw you got to take out. And then you got to buy a new fob for, you trying to do something that you didn't know how to do.
Okay, I have another question. This is not key related, but it's something that I wonder how many people have actually done this. I've done this before. So you're pulling, I'm interpreting this question, so bear with me. You're pulling into a parking spot, and you don't pull into the first one. You pull into all the way to where your car's facing out, so all you have to do is put it in drive and drive out. You cut that corner too close, and you end up on top of the curb, and you hear that scraping noise because your tire is now probably in the bed, and then to get it out, you're going to have to hear that scraping noise again. I'm assuming you're scraping the bottom of the car. Are you doing any damage to the car?
You can be. You can scrape the.
You can't see it from the outside.
No, but see, the problem is the front end of the car, especially, has the front of the car has plastic devices. They're shields and different things that protect the belts from getting wet if you go through high water. I also have what we call air dams under the front of the bumper cover to guide air as you're traveling down the highway. It guides air, pulls air from a certain portion of the car between the bumper and the road, and it draws it up and puts that air directly through the radiator and the air conditioning condenser so that it kind of directs the airflow for cooling purposes. And if you break that off or damage it in some way, the airflow dynamics are now altered and the car could actually overheat. Right. So, or the air conditioner doesn't work right. So these things don't seem like a big deal when they're scraped under there, but if you do something like that, it's usually not a big deal, but you should at least have it checked once in a while. You know, if you know you heard that noise, next time you get an oil change, next time you go in for something, you might have them check it just to see, because you wouldn't notice it this time of the year, but in the summer, then you're going to notice it. If that plastic shroud is broken and it doesn't direct the airflow like it should, you'll notice it this summer when you go to use the air conditioner.
Yeah, I could see where you would definitely risk hurting something up front because there's a lot more going on. It doesn't seem like in the back there's a whole lot going on.
You're talking about scraping something if you're backing into a parking spot?
No, you're pulling out of a parking spot front end first. So
okay.
you backed into the parking spot.
Okay.
You pull out, you catch the right tire and wheel on the curb.
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Going up over the curb. You feel it go,
right.
Yeah.
And you hear that awful crunching, scraping sound.
Yeah, you know, that's the bottom of the underpan back there scraping, and that, a lot of times there's nothing there to really injure. But be careful about that. Try not to do that, of course, because you got to remember, tires and especially the rims now, the wheels of the car, they're
true.
Expensive. If you scrape them, damage them, crack them, or injure them in some way, then replacing those can be, some wheels are ridiculous. I mean, just replacing an aluminum alloy wheel that comes on an automobile now is incredibly expensive.
Yeah, can't they, don't they have a way of buffing that out?
They can repair.
If you scrape it.
You can repair rims even. There's places that'll repair rims, but the damage has to be, it can't be too bad, otherwise it's not safe to repair. So it's best just to not do that. You know.
So let's talk a question that came in. This was, I guess, based on a show a couple weeks ago. We were talking about old cars with very, very low mileage versus new cars with high mileage. This individual sent in an email that said that, and I did not write the model down, but the car was a 1998 car.
Okay.
Had 50,000 miles on it, so it was very low. And whoever's selling it wants $7,000 for it, which seems, I don't know, I didn't look anything up, but does that even seem reasonable? Or sounds...
Hey, Bob, here's the problem. A 98 car with 50,000 miles on it is going to have, depending on how it was taken care of, even though it's low mileage, it probably sat around a lot. Was it taken care of? Was the maintenance kept up? And if so, was it, $7,000 sounds like a lot of money for a 98 vehicle. So is it a specialized car of some kind?
It didn't seem like it.
No.
It seemed like your average car.
Well, it's going to be a niche market for that person because the value of the vehicle is probably not even listed anymore, being a 98. So
That's
it's
true.
going to be whatever you can get for it. And the nicer it is, the more you can get for it.
Yeah, obviously you want to get that checked out from a mechanic and to see if there's any major problems lurking. But as we've talked about in the past, there is inherently there could be problems because it doesn't have that kind of miles on. That's an old vehicle.
Yeah, it can develop its own problems just from being really old and not driven enough. So it's things the mechanic would have to check out, because nobody but a mechanic is going to look for things like that knows a little bit more about an automobile, to look for those little secret things that could be problematic.
This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.